you, Mr. Davy. That was great. Center of gravity. Spirit is your center of gravity. That's something to take home with you. That is actually what our study for the past few weeks and the upcoming couple of weeks is all about. We've been studying the Four Agreements. The Four Agreements is all about knowing Spirit as your center of gravity and being able to get to that spot where you can experience that and be that. That Spirit is your place where you are balanced, where you know your wholeness, where you know your truth. And you can be all of that. Yeah, you can be all of that at once. You don't have to pick and choose. You can be all of it at once because that is the truth of you. And this week, we're looking at agreements 3 and 4. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. One thing that we have seen in our study so far is that all of these agreements rely on each other, that they're all about the same thing. And combining them all together brings you into that conscious activity of being aware and awake. That's what it's all about. That's what this book is about. Now, in this book, as I mentioned last week, it can be a bit jinky to the self because he writes it in absolutist language. It either is or it isn't. You are doing it right or you're not doing it right. And usually a lot of times when we read into it, we're reading it and we go, well, I'm not doing it right. We're never doing it right all the time. It's a part of our human condition. If we were doing it all the time, we'd be ascended or have a whole gathering of minions feeding us grapes or something. But we have found that in our four agreements, to be impeccable with your word, you have to not take anything personally. You have to not take things personally in order to be impeccable with your word. And in order to not take anything personally, you can't make assumptions. And in order to not make assumptions, you have to do your best. So it's all in the flow of doing the best you can to be the best you can, to express the truth of who you are at any moment of wherever you are, of your existence, so to speak. Let's get into this third agreement. Don't make assumptions. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? Don't make assumptions. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm not going to make assumptions. I don't make assumptions. Well, you're assuming that you don't. We make assumptions without even thinking, without even knowing that we're doing it, because it's a way that we've been conditioned to operate in the world. And the dream, the domestication, we've been conditioned to make assumptions. We make assumptions where, as we do, we're believing something to be true, when in fact, you don't know if it's true or not. But you believe it to be true because, according to you, it should be. And how often does that work out? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. In the Four Agreements, page 64, Ruiz tells us, when we make assumptions, we misunderstand. We take it personally We end up creating a whole big drama for nothing. That's what assumptions often lead to. A big drama for nothing. And it's for nothing because all you had to do was ask. Ask first. If you're not sure, if you think your assumption is not on point, ask. Make sure. Because you can create, you can ruin your day or ruin your week with one assumption that goes haywire. Anybody have that happen to you? Yeah. It's part of our day-to-day living. We make assumptions because of our inherent need to know. We have to know. We have to know why. That's a big thing. We have to know why. We have to know. We just have to know. That's why, there's certain professionals that have letters behind their name. PhD, LSW, da-da-da-da-da-da. All of us has, you don't have to have a degree. Behind your name, you can put MSU, make stuff up. Sounds good, David Florence, MSU. If we don't know, we make stuff up because it makes us feel safe, makes us feel like we know. And we'll take that feeling as far as we can go with it, as far as we can go until, didn't work. So often, most often, we have to stop and find out. We have to actually ask the question and find out what happened. Why didn't this work? Why was my assumption wrong? Why? We have to discover why. Once we assume why it didn't work, we have to find out the truth. Well, it's best to find out the truth beforehand. That's not in our makeup. It makes life a bit more interesting and it's the way we're used to living it anyway. Now, have you ever, when we ask somebody or direct somebody, if we're a person of leadership, to do something, we ask somebody to do something thinking they know how to do it, or at least they should know how to do it. That's a big one. Oh, this person is, I used to do that as a journeyman. By apprentice, if I had a fourth-year apprentice, that means they're just about ready to turn out. They should know just about everything that a journeyman should know, should being the key word. I consistently found out how much fourth-year apprentices did not know. Because I would say, go and do this, that, the other thing, and I'll be back later, and I'll come back later, and there's nothing done. So, I'm behind now. Why isn't anything done? Well, I didn't know how to do it. Well, you didn't ask? Well, no. I thought you'd come by and tell me. So I was put behind, and I had to do it myself while instructing the apprentice how to do it. So next time I asked, I knew that he knew how to do it, or she knew how to do it. It saves us so much time and potential aggravation. I missed something? Okay, I'll watch the tape. Assumptions hook into something that we all have to work with. expectations. Assumptions are putting forth our expectations. Now, I looked up expectations according to Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, many, many other authors. And just about all I could find was expectations from spirit, expectations of good, expectations of abundance, expectations of peace. And when we're working with spirit, that's all well and good, because those things, peace and comfort and abundance, are all part of God's nature. We can expect abundance when we go to spirit for abundance. We can expect comfort when we go to spirit for comfort, because that is the nature of spirit. And true, the nature of human beings, of each and every one of us, the absolute nature is that. But through that domestication process, we've forgotten our absolute nature, or it's been covered up with other things. But we still like to do that. Our expectations of others is usually much higher than they have of themselves, because we expect them to know what we know. We expect them to have the same experiences that we have, when there is the farthest thing from the truth that there could ever be. We are assuming our life into the life of someone else. And how weird is that when you think about it? We can't assume someone else's experiences. If you assume something about a person, you're expecting a certain result. And if you don't get it, there's a good chance that you will what? Not a rhetorical question. That you will take it personally. Yes. There's a very good chance that you are going to take it personally. And how silly is that? That you would assume someone else would know something or do something, and they don't know it or it doesn't get done, and so you take it personally, like they were doing it to do something against you, when it has what they do has nothing to do with me, just like what I do has nothing to do with them. If I assume something of someone and they didn't live up to that assumption, that has nothing to do with me. The only thing that has to do with me is my assuming that they did. And and my reaction to whatever happens when it doesn't get done. That's my part. My part is not to project my life into someone else's life. My part is to understand when our lives are to connect. My part is to understand, to the point I need to, how their life is going to connect with my life. And that's where asking questions comes in. To be clear, communication and clarity are a key thing for your happiness. Ta-da! You don't hear that very often, but that's the truth. Communication and clarity are the key thing, one of the key things for your happiness, because then you avoid disappointments. You may not completely avoid them, because if you communicate with somebody and you find out something that you don't like, or something that you thought, you thought it was one way and you find out that it was another, you may not be pleased with that, but at least you know. And it's not going to be dropped in your lap like a lead balloon. And you can move forward from there. You can move forward and do what it is you need to do. Express what it is you need to express. And then you can reap the good that is yours to reap quicker. Rather than having to go through the whole process of disappointment, discovery, rediscovery, implementation, learning, and a new expression. Sounds like a lot to go through, but that's what we go through every time we need to shift gears. Assumptions are a shortcut to real knowing. To real knowing and conscious connection with your world. I believe that when you will find that when you stop making so many assumptions, you will become better at doing your best. Think about that. When you stop making assumptions, you will become better at doing your best. The chapter starts right out with telling you that your best will not always be the same. Page 76, he says, sometimes your best will be better than at other times. Your best isn't always the same. It depends on your energy, your frame of mind, the circumstances. But it is important to always do your best. I have a friend I used to work with. When he knew he wasn't doing his best, he said he was calling it in. I'm just going to call it in or dial it in. I'm just going to, that's how I'm going to do it. I don't feel like doing my best. And sometimes you don't feel like doing your best because you know it's going to be a lot of effort. And you don't want to put all that effort into something. But what he's telling us here is even those times when you don't want to do your best, you don't feel like putting in all your effort because of whatever reason, that's the best you can do. So doing your best is actually a frame of mind. It's a frame of mind. I am doing my best. And that will get you through a lot of things, especially when you're faced with something in the world that is a real challenge, and you don't know if you can do it or not. And as long as you take it up, and usually it's something that you have to take up. You have no choice but to take up. It's one of those things that Spirit just plops in your lap. You didn't necessarily create it. The world just comes together and boom, here's this thing. OMG, what am I supposed to do with this? But you have to do something because here it is. So, rather than just sloughing it off, you take this thing and you do your best with it. You do your best. And even if your best doesn't seem to be that good, it's working. It's working for you. It gives you, even if it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to, it gives you the condolence of knowing I did my best. Even though it didn't work out, I did my best. Because truly, your best comes from your heart. Comes from your heart. If you're doing your best, you're doing it with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. You're doing it the best that you can. And as you're doing it the best that you can, if it doesn't work out, you have gained wisdom. You are a wiser individual because of what you did. Moving out of the realm of consciousness of even exchange, doing what you do the best that you can do it is because that's who you are. That's who you are. You're not doing it to please anybody. You're doing it because that is who you are, especially if it's something you love to do. We all have stuff that we love to do. And we always do that the best that we can, do we not? Every artist, every musician, every person out here who has, a gardener, just it goes on and on and on. If we're doing what we love, we are generally doing it the best that we can. Because we're doing it out of love. Now we can live our lives that way, live our lives out of love in that same mindset, in that same mind frame, then our life will continually get better. Because we are continually doing things out of love instead of for being noticed. On pages 84 and 85, Ruiz tells us, you were born with a right to be happy. You don't need to prove anything. Say no when you want to say no. Say yes when you want to say yes. You have the right to be you. You can only be you when you are doing your best. It empowers you to take your mask off. As long as you're doing your best, it doesn't really matter what other people think of you. When you do something because you want to do it or love to do it, while not expecting recognition or return, you have that opportunity to see what is in here, to see what's in your heart. And that is the avenue of self-discovery, the avenue to greater happiness. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 11 and 12 and 15 and 16, we see Paul tells us this. For what person knows a man's thought except the spirit of the man which is in him? What person knows their thought except the spirit of the person that's within them? Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit from which God, that we might understand the gifts bestowed upon us by God. The spiritual person discerns all things, but is himself to be judged by no one. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. No one else is going to know what's in your heart except for you and God. Spirit knows what's in your heart because Spirit is always moving through you and as you. No one else, we were talking about the difference between discernment and judgment. Discernment comes from Spirit. Judgment comes from the world. Ego, you might say. Judgment says right or wrong. Spirit discerns the process of creation. So you can discern for yourself how you are doing. Others truly cannot judge you on how you are doing because they don't know why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what's inside of you. No one can truly judge you. Only the Christ within knows that. The Christ within you knows that. When you are doing your best, you are aware of yourself and who you are as an individual. So the judgment of others isn't valid. You have the unique Christ within, and when you are working from that Christ, you are not subjecting yourself to the scrutiny and judgment of others. because you are doing all you can do. You're claiming your God-given right to be happy in what you're doing. Sometimes to be who you are, sometimes to be happy, you have to take a risk. And that could be a scary thing. That's what risks are about. You have to take a risk sometimes to be happy. And that's what I'm asking you to do this week. Do your best. Just because it's what you want to do. Know that your best is just going to get better. That you can take that risk to be yourself. That you can claim your right to happiness. This week, friends, I encourage you to look for and pay attention to your assumptions. Do your best to be who you are with integrity and compassion in whatever you do, and allow yourself to be the blessing and to be blessed as Spirit would have you be. Being the blessing is the greatest blessing, and that is always yours to have. God blesses you.